Right, so when disaster strikes, that is the time for a government to rise to the occasion. The time for MPs to stand up for their communities and demand the government of the day, especially when that is their own party, to help their constituents in their time of greatest need. Not, apparently, if you are Rhondda MP Chris Bryant, though. After Storm Bert rolled through South Wales, including Bryant's Rhondda Valley patch, a major incident has been declared across Rhondda Cynon Taf. It was Bryant's time to shine, therefore, time to go to government and stand by his people, his constituents, demand the government's help, his Labour government's help for his flood-stricken communities. That is what any normal MP would be demanding. That is their job, is it not? Well, not Bryant, it seems. He's instead taken to social media to announce that he, apparently, has set up a GoFundMe to help flood victims, apparently choosing the way of charity rather than the government supporting their own people in a time of greatest need. That, it would appear, is his preference. Who does the economy work for again? But even that doesn't actually appear to be true. So what does Bryant think he's playing at, and what exactly has he done? Is this all a stunt for some brownie points, or a complete dereliction of duty, because people who voted for him need help now? Right, so across South Wales in the wake of Storm Bert, there has been absolute devastation left behind. It is an area prone to being hit with flooding. Goodness me, yes it is. Between 200 and 300 properties, it has been reported, have been flooded this time around, both residential and commercial. And so as we've witnessed year on year in news reports covering such incidents, we see cars underwater, residents and business owners being interviewed about it, dealing with the aftermath, with one business owner interviewed by Wales Online saying it was like a scene from the Titanic, apparently. Another article covering the floods from the same outlet described schools being shut, bridges shut as well, and that there had even been a landslide. When compared to the last major storm flood to hit this area, which was back in 2019 courtesy of Storm Dennis, this has been described as worse. So where is the government then, first of all? They are responsible for flood management, are they not? It falls under the remit of DEFRA, as it happens, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, the Minister for which is Steve Reed, and under him within the department is a bespoke floods minister, would you believe? I don't know if you were aware of such a thing, but there is a floods minister, and these days it's the MP for Kingston upon Hull West and Halton Price, Emma Hardy. Not that you'd know it, she is completely invisible, it seems, on such matters. However, here's what Reed had to say about the floods in a piece of footage released by DEFRA themselves just yesterday on these floods.
Well, I've been kept updated throughout the weekend on the situation that's going on, and I've just come out of an emergency meeting with the Environment Agency. First thing to say is I want to offer my sympathies to everybody who's been affected by these floods, and how devastating it is if your home or your business in particular get affected in this way. But I'd also like to offer my thanks to the emergency services on the ground who have been out there straight away this weekend, making sure people are kept safe. So we're getting severe weather much more frequently, and in the winter that means more flooding than in previous years. This government inherited from the previous government flood defences that are in the worst condition on record. Now, we've allocated in the budget £2.4 billion to upgrade our flood defences, better maintain those we already have, build new flood defences to keep people safe. That will make a difference, and that's what we need to do to cope much better with the impact of climate change that we're seeing with these floods.
So a quick opportunity to acknowledge the devastation, express a little bit of sympathy, put the boot into the Tories over it, of course, and remind people that Labour are putting £2.4 billion into flood defences because of the state the Tories left them in. Flood defences are not exactly going to help these people now, though, are they? They've been flooded. That £2.4 billion is a 2-year investment, so it's £1.2 billion a year for argument's sake, which is an increase on the Tories' 6-year plan, which was a budget of £5.2 billion, which they announced back in 2020. So that works out at around £800 million a year. So it is an increase in flood defence budget, but a slight one. And when it comes to flood defence budget, this is all well and good. But what about people who have already been flooded? Putting money in is all well and good. But where it gets used, who benefits from it when numerous parts of the country are prone to flooding, is also a valid question. The bigger question. All of this money appears to be in the pot for flood defences, but floods ruin lives, so where is the assistance for that? Every MP, especially a Labour one who has a constituency parts of which may be prone to flooding, will surely want a slice of that pie for flood defences, because it makes them look good, shows their party, their government, and they themselves are working hard to mitigate an ongoing problem. And of all the MPs you'd think would be front and centre right now, given Steve Reed's statement made to camera there, DEFRA wanted to come across as taking this matter seriously, it'd be the one who is the MP for an area not just flooded, but where a major incident has been declared due to flooding. And it's the MP for Rhondda and Ogmore, Chris Bryant. Now, Bryant also happens to be a government minister. If anything, that ought to give him even more clout than the average Labour MP. He's the Minister for Data Protection and Telecoms. But equally, by not pushing for help, at least publicly, which is where, of course, he can be seen to be fighting for something by those who vote for him, it can be perceived that he's putting his own ministerial position before constituents. But what damns him most of all is that where he is publicly speaking out for the people affected by the flooding in Rhondda and Ogmore, it's not demands of government to help these people affected by his floods. It's not government he's demanding help for his constituents. It's to turn to all of us, the British public, and ask us to put our hands in our pockets to help, because rather than turn to government, Bryant is going around touting a GoFundMe to raise money to help those affected. But to make what difference? He spoke to Kay Burley on Sky about it.
You don't want to say that the worst is over. I know that we're going to have to try and raise as much money as we possibly can for individual families who are really, really going to be struggling in my patch. So if anybody has a spare £1,000, you just have to go GoFundMe, Rhondda and Ogmore floods. I'd be really grateful. If we could get to £20,000, we'd be able to give to £200 to everybody who I think has been affected.
So that's 200 quid for everyone affected. Business is ruined, homes wrecked, and you're not even going to replace a carpet with that, are you? That is a gesture. Might well be a well-meant one, I wouldn't argue against that, but it's not going to make material differences to people's lives who have been affected. You hope these people are, of course, all insured. But the more often they get flooded, the more prone to flooding they are. The more often this is going to happen, then the more expensive insurance will have become, over the course of recent years, successive floodings. And some may not be able to afford it anymore, with the cost of living having been driven ever upwards. And with this Labour government continuing it with their economic choices, again clobbering ordinary working class people instead of those with all the money at the very top, the very richest. And it's going to be communities like Rhondda and Ogmore, typical working class communities the country up and down, that are going to suffer for that. We're talking some of the poorest communities in the whole of the UK here in South Wales, are we not? But it is Bryant's online discussion of this GoFundMe page he spoke to Sky about and plugged that I also wanted to draw attention to, because it really does give a sense, I think, that he's not giving his all where he should be, quite frankly, as an MP. He tweeted out the charity page as well, saying along with that, following the devastating flooding in many parts of the Rhondda and Ogmore today, I have set up a GoFundMe page. Funds will go to those in need, including those who have lost everything, via the registered charity, the Mabon Trust. Please give generously. Again, we're back to how far £200 goes for people who have lost everything, but here he is saying he set up the GoFundMe page. Did you really, though, Chris? Did you really? You didn't mention that to Kay Burley, did you, Chris, that it was all you're doing? Let's have a look at the GoFundMe page and see who set it up then, shall we? And it's a chap called Gareth Wynne Hughes. Is that a pen name for Bryant? Well, what's the point of that, then? That makes no sense at all. No, Hughes is a Labour councillor in Tony Pandy. It isn't Bryant. Bryant didn't set it up. Bryant did make the first donation of £100, as he touts for spare thousands on Sky News, but that seems to be as much of a connection to this GoFundMe page as he actually has. Charity has its place. Charity being set up and organised by a local councillor, as this has been, when local services are bearing the brunt of dealing with the aftermath of flooding, is one thing. It is an extra thing they can do. It is inviting people out of the kindness of their hearts to help their fellow man, especially at this time of year when we're in that run-up to Christmas, when these floods always seem to happen. And it's supposed to be a time to be all about goodwill. But equally, charity has also been described by another Labour politician as a cold, grey and loveless thing. A Labour politician who was actually Labour, and not this Tory Tribute Act knockoff. And when you're the party in power, when you're a government minister, why are you not asking the government you are part of to step up? Because it seems Bryant has not done that. And it is in response to being questioned about just that that he's given us that very impression. Because when he In response to his GoFundMe tweet, it was put to Brian by somebody that his government should step up. He replied, "I hope it will." Well, the responses you got to that comment say it all, really, don't they? Because why are you hoping when you can literally ask them, demand it of them, lobby them? If they said no, you should say they've said no. Do you serve your constituents or your party first here? Certainly Bryant has invited much scorn in addition to this. Novelist Raphael Dogg said, "No government money then? Rather government money only for private healthcare and the oil industry. Oh, and BlackRock. Mustn't forget BlackRock. There is always money for what the government wants, so where is it for the flood victims then?" Point well made here, given other choices being made right now, and pretty rancid ones at that. Flintshire People's Voice leader Sam Swash said, "Utterly grotesque that ordinary people are being asked by an MP in the governing party of the UK and Wales to crowdfund a response to a flood disaster, all whilst the PM is sat down with BlackRock planning the continued asset stripping of the country in pursuit of private profit." Again, BlackRock there being used as a prime example of where this government will invest while not doing so elsewhere. Not even being asked to, it seems, to deal with or help people to cope with flooding, to invest in their lives of their own people wrecked by these floods. Wrecked lives won't be fixed by flood defences when they're already flooded. And the Wales Young Communist League tweeted in response, "Spending $3 billion a year for as long as it takes in Ukraine for our safety apparently, yet setting up a GoFundMe for his own constituents when his own constituents are at very real risk of serious harm, can't make it up." No, Bryant didn't set up that crowdfund as it happens, but the point is a valid one. When we can give money away to another country but have none for our own people, who is this government really serving when evidently it isn't us? Not even to the point Bryant is asking, it seems, for the government to help his constituents who have been flooded, seemingly thinking boosting a charity appeal is going to be good optics for him. Very much the opposite is true, Chris. I hate to break it to you. I do feel for those affected. I have chipped into this charity appeal, and if you can, please do so as well. But by no means let the government off the hook here either, because they should be stepping up here and not pathetically hiding behind charity instead. All in all, it is little wonder this Labour government is sinking as fast as it is in public opinion. Though, of course, Keir Starmer is far more to blame for that than any of his other ministers. Where online charity might be Chris Bryant's preference, calling out Starmer invited a certain online petition, and although it absolutely damns Starmer and shows how unpopular he is, the liar he is, now widely seen by large swathes of the public, it is also being opportunistically seized upon by other politicians who could be far, far worse. Check out that story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.